Hi Tanya, living the internet. So, for the sake of turning this into a video afterwards, this is a piece of cartridge paper and I have primed it with one layer of gesso, and then I've gently sanded it down because you could see some of the brush marks. And then I've just used a charcoal stick. Now it's not the ideal charcoal, I would suggest willow if you're going to have a go at this, but this is fine, so if you've got this in the cupboard, use it. And then I've literally all over it and wiped it with a shop cloth, and I've sort of left the centre bit slightly lighter than the rest, and now I'm sketching out my image. And my image is from a royalty-free site. I just picked it, I quite like the moodiness of it. And as you can see, I hope, I'm literally putting all my guidelines in, everything in, while I start to just roughly draw out the shapes of this face. So all of it is removable, which is brilliant because it means that right up until the end of your painting or your picture, you can still carry on removing things. So I'm very roughly sketching it out. And I've got a lot of hair going on here, so and I'm going to fill in some of these eyes, and I'm pretty sure you could see how kind of crude it is at this point. Now get in there with your fingers and start smudging. I promise you're going to be wowed once I start the good stuff. So we've got lots of shadow going on this side. And over her eyes. Okay. Lots of shadow. Now I'm just using the picture as reference, looking at tones, black and white, just where the dark areas are. Very roughly. Okay, she's got quite a dark neck going on here. And hi guys, thanks for joining. Now I realise at this point this picture's looking a bit crude, but the magic stuff's going to happen shortly, so bear with me. This is a charcoal stick that I'm using, and I'm just very crudely at this stage marking in the features that I can see. Use my fingers to smudge it all around. She's got quite a dark top lip, not so much on the bottom. Okay, quite a lot of dark here. Okay. Now, I'm not going to win any Artist of the Year awards for what I've got so far. You can see that. I'm pretty sure that having just watched me scribble that lot on, that you could do that too. Okay. So now is the magic stage. I'm going to pop that there so I can see it. So what I've got is a tea towel, and this tea towel is wet. I've wrung it out and it's got black on it from when I used it before. So it's damp. Now the dampness is going to allow us to pull back to some of the white areas where we want to underneath. Just look at this. This is where it starts to look really magic. Now if you use a tiny bit in your fingernail to dig it in. Now, even if you'd have done solid black on this picture, you could still pull it back with a wet cloth. Can you see she's starting to, just with a few little, isn't that cool? Now you've got time to play because the charcoal doesn't dry, it's not like paint. So we can adjust. It's a little white of her eye. And the white of the eye, everyone's got them because that's where the light is, but the tip is, it doesn't matter where you put it in the eye as long as you put it in the same place on both eyes, otherwise you achieve the cross-eyed look. Now I'm just using my fingernail to etch out her top lid. Now this doesn't mean I'm not going to go back in with charcoal and try and play with it a bit more. This is the early stages, but can you see she's being pulled from the background in this super clever, simple way. Now that my cloth is really quite wet, so you don't necessarily need it as wet as I've got it. You've got to be a little bit careful. That's why I have primed it with gesso, to make the paper stronger, so that it will take this kind of beating I'm giving it with the wet. And now I can go back into her eye, draw the two lines. I think this needs a little bit more there. The eye's starting to really look like an eye now. But even if, and I've done other drawings like this, you put the eye in the wrong place, you literally use your damp cloth, go over the whole thing, move it over. It's that. So you just can't do wrong. You can spend more time on it, but if you get to, especially if you're doing a likeness picture where it's in a portrait, where it's important that it looks right and you can't work out what's wrong, and then you go back to it and realise it's because a feature's slightly in the wrong place, that's fixable. Okay, so I'm just taking a little bit more time now with the charcoal to fine up the details of her face, but I am going to go back in with wet cloth. Hi Julie, hi Charlene, hi Jackie, hi other Jackie, Lydia, Sveti, Larissa. Thank you for joining. If you missed the beginning, it's a shame because you will see how easy this process has been, really. So it's worth a watch because I really think you could do this. If you want to have a go at something fun and messy and getting your hands in there. Right, we got some hair, so we've now, like this eyeball is obviously, there's way too much white going on there, so that needs fixing. Okay. And sometimes, even though you're going to end up covering up a feature, it's important to know where it was. So because this is such a forgiving medium, you can do that. You can put it in even though you're going to after cover it up, or cover up some of it. But I think it's probably more accurate if you put in the whole eye rather than just part of it. This one you can obviously only see part of it, but there's going to be little bits peeping through. even though I'm covering up most of it. This bit definitely needs to be darker. One of the other tricks that I would say, tricks of the trade, is the reason caricatures work so well, and you can still recognise them for who they are, is that the trick is that if you get the original shape of the outside of the head, the face, right, you can pretty much distort what you like inside and you will still recognise them. It might not look like a completely accurate portrait, but it will certainly help you recognise your subject. So if you're struggling to get a likeness, it is really worth going back to the initial, sorry, that's my dog, initial shape of the head and making sure that that's in place. Now obviously, even though this is her forehead, her hair is going to carry on much higher than that. I think her eyes are about halfway, so we need to build hair up higher. Okay, and we've got this lovely top going on under here. So I'm just gonna put some heavier dark on there. Put a bone going on there. It is better with this technique to have a black and white picture, so even if you've got a colour one, if you possibly can, take it to some kind of editing program on your laptop and filter out, turn it into a black and white. You will find the process easier. It's just easier to find the tones, the black and white. And the grey obviously in between. So I'm just now I've gone in quite heavy with the charcoal. I'm smudging it out ready for my round two with the cloth. Okay. So she's taking shape. So now I'm going to use my cloth again, looking at the areas that are really white, and changing, because it obviously makes the cloth very black. This is a damp tea towel. I've wet it and wrung it out. It doesn't work on a dry one. So I'm mindful that my tea towel is really quite wet, so I don't want to go, I will need to let that sort of dry a little bit before I go crazy on it. Now I'm using my fingernail in the rag, in the wet rag, to just pull out some little highlights, which will probably be quite hard to see on the camera, but I can see them on the page. So we've got quite a white forehead here. So, but I want to use my fingers to blend it. I don't want a sort of a solid white line. There we go. Just got a very white highlight down my nose. Now just take your time. I'm using my finger now, but if you're worried, you can always stick a paintbrush. Use the end of a paintbrush, the hard end, to make your marks. You know, push it through the cloth if you need too much detail. It would be trickier if the picture was really small, because you obviously need, it's harder to create the detail when you've only got a finger that's creating the detail. So okay. Now this bit of her eye in the original is actually quite dark, and this. There we are. So when you buy these charcoal kits, they come in, I've got like a little box, a little tin box, and you get a fat chunky stick and a thinner stick, and I've also got in there a pencil kind of shape. I've snapped it in half by mistake, but so you have got the means to create as thin lines as you want. So I can put her lip, those sort of creases that she's got in there. Now I want to do a bit more around this nose, and I tend to work round the picture. I don't stay in the same spot, because coming back to it and looking at it afresh, coming back to an area again, makes you see things that you didn't see before. So it's just, I think it works to just keep moving and come back to. And equally, if you've made an area really wet as well, which I am doing with this cloth because it's probably wetter than it should be, I'm giving the paper a little bit of a chance to recover, because otherwise it obviously will tear. But I have put a coat on the paper of gesso to prime it and protect it a little bit more then. It would be as a raw, it's only cartridge paper, so it's not watercolour or anything like that. Just put in a little bit of her eye, tear duct. And I'm going to pull out her eyelid. And this bit here. So although in the original, the whole outside of the area is quite black, I'm probably going to just pull back a little bit. So we can see her head. I liked this picture. I feel like it's quite a moody picture. And I'm just drawing in some of those important hairlines. Okay. And we're getting there. I need to get the white of her eye back in. It seems to have disappeared. So let's have a go. And then you can actually kind of use your fingernail and scrape it out. There. Now if I just take off a little bit of the black on, let's see, I said before, doesn't matter where you put the highlight as long as you put it in the same place on both pictures. So now that's my nail having actually scraped the paper off, that's why it looks so bright, but that's not a bad thing. I think it needs to start smalling, making it smaller. And I'll make the other one a little bit bigger to match. Okay, now some of her face this side is dark but can be seen more than it is, so just carefully. I'm going to lose the hair. Okay. don't know who's saying hello to me because it's Fairy Chic saying hello, but it's obviously one of my admin. There, now that's wet. That's okay. I like that actually. So do a bit more down the nose. Yeah. So this is just charcoal and a damp cloth achieving this. And I'm just using my finger to press out some lines. Okay. Now on the original, this really is quite dark. And on the original, I'm not convinced that the chin isn't a little bit lower. That's okay, because you can just rub it away. Yeah. So she's got quite a defined chin here. So that sort of circle area. It's going to quite dark over here. And you want it all blended, you don't want lines. I want this to look like an old painting. We're going to do something else clever once I've got this stage done. Right, now I have taken some of the paper off here. I'm just going to okay, I leave it. Okay. So it's a game of take it away, adding a bit more until you get. Now if you're like me doing this from a reference picture, I'm really not that worried if it's a portrait, if it's an accurate portrait or not, because I won't be looking at the reference picture again afterwards. So that's obviously a personal decision to you of whether you're doing a portrait and need to play for longer, or you might get to a point where you think, well, do you know what, it looks like a face, I can see it's a face. So that might be enough. I just want a bit more in our mouth. Now, I have also got here a China pencil, and I've also got a white piece of chalk. which I leave like till now, till we're getting to the end. The chalk is obviously brighter, so use sparingly. I'm aware that I'm rubbing bits of paper off here as well because it's but you run the risk if you rub too hard with the wet cloth of literally tearing through the paper. So having a white pastel just make those super white areas, and I think you try to keep them to a minimum as well. So on the only the really white areas. And I will show you the China pen, but the marks are not, they don't show up as much, but they are quite good for just adding contrast in the hairline. In the hair. So here's the China pen. And they just add some subtle highlights. They're not as strong at all, but I think they work quite well in the hair. They're quite cool pencils. They unravel, and you can use them on glass as well. So they give me the subtler white, and I've obviously got slightly more control than I have with the white chalk that's fat and just kind of playing at this point, but you'll see why when we get on to the next bit. It's important to get all the lines in of the eye, the eyelid, the bottom of that eyelid. Okay, so where's my pencil? I'm just drawing in a few eyelashes. Making sure I've got the tone of her eyelid. I need to make sure these eyes are even. That's not bad. Can't see much of the eye, which is the plan. Okay. Just making a more definite mark for her top. So we've done quite a lot of smudging and pulling back. I just darkening this up just a bit. This area is where I've literally torn through the paper. I'll wet the cloth, but that's okay. So a few last touches before we seal this charcoal. Just try and eat into that neck a bit. She's got this beautiful bone structure. It's really shown off by the light. I even add a bit of white there. I think it ties it in. And just a fraction underneath as well. I was putting it on to take it off, but it is leaving a whiter area. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fix it by using normal hairspray. So we're just going to spray it. Like so. Don't want it to be soaking. And then I'm going to use the hairdryer just to dry it off. One more layer in case I missed anything, and try it again. It dries very quickly. Good now, so we're pretty sealed in. Now, another fun part. I have got some acrylic paint and it's a sort of brown colour, and I'm just mixing it up at the moment. I'm going to just add, by mixing it up by adding the water, so it's going to act a little bit more like a glaze than solid paint. So I'm adding plenty of water. Okay, if you can see that brown colour. I'm going to work very quickly with this big brush to get it over my image. As you can see, the hairspray has sealed the picture below, which is what we wanted. Okay, just covering the whole piece. Now if you get too much or you get runs, you can obviously use a dry brush to move it around, move it away. Might not want so much on our features. So just, you may or may not want drips. So there we go. Okay. So I'm just using that brush to soften it as well. And now I'm going to go in with my damp cloth again, bearing in mind that underneath is sealed. So I can start picking up the areas of the brown paint that I don't want to necessarily show on the face, and it won't disturb the drawing that we've done underneath. So we're just revealing a kind of oldie world picture. So just pulling it back. Be gentle. Blend in some of the sides. It's just a damp tea towel that I'm using to pull back the brown glaze that we've just put over the top of this. So I'm being gentle because the paper is damp and fragile. I don't want to push too hard as I'm going to tear the paper. And I kind of want to leave most of the brown around the outside, and I'm just pulling the brown away from the face to reveal the face that we've created underneath. some of those highlights out that we did on her. So we can go over any of these areas. We can go back in with our charcoal higher. We can add, bearing in mind we can't take away what's underneath now because we've sealed it with hairspray. But we can create anything extra that we feel. We can add to that we can't take away. So you need, before you get to the hairspray stage, you need to make sure that you're happy with what you've got underneath, because you won't be able to pull that back anymore once you've sealed it. So I'm just using the black charcoal just to pop out some of the features just a little bit more, because they've been dampened down with the process of the glaze. Just want to make sure they really pop. Too much white going on in this, aren't we? That's better. And probably not enough white going on in this eye. That's okay. So I've obviously done this in a brown, but you could, if you have a colour, you could use whatever colour glaze you want over it. I quite like the old worldy look of it. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't look just as effective with a different colour. I feel like difficult by using the square end when I could be using the pencil. It's just about being fussy at this point and just trying to get the detail. I think she looks quite cool. Gonna bring in some those hair strokes again. Okay. We're very nearly there now. Okay. Use my China pencil just to try and get a little bit of white in there. It's not going to show up that much. There we are, I've got some white scraped away some of the paper. Okay. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that journey. I should take some close-ups of it so that you can see the detail. And it's going to be a move away from the picture situation very soon, which I seem to be struggling with. Just a little bit of white. Yeah, a little bit of white on the end of it. Don't go crazy with white, guys. The white is... Imagine the white is gold dust. See the white, just those tiny little bits serve to pop out. They are so powerful, but if you were to use... Apologies, that's someone at the door. So I'm going to have to go. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you again next time.